Right, guys. I'd just like to talk a little bit more about. You see a lot now going on in Europe, in Munich. I think it's Munich. This security um, meeting between all everyone except the Russians are there. Well, I think the Russians are there as well, actually. So everyone's there, and so we've got to go back now, and they're all asking these questions as if they don't know about what's gone on before. They actually asked who's to blame for this conflict. Now, if you look back and if you know about a woman called Victoria Newland and there was a guy called Pyatt, that should tell you everything because there was a phone call and it's still up on YouTube. Just search, and that's a good starting point if you don't know what you're talking about and you don't know any of the history between. It goes back even further to like 1956, and that's, I think it was the Helsinki Agreement, and there was another one between Ukraine and Russia, where it was laid out that basically Ukraine couldn't join NATO and things like that. Anyway, but more recently, if you look up Victoria Newland and Pyatt, that'll tell you everything in that phone call. That who was to blame and who was orchestrating the violent coup in I think it was 2014 or 15, and then Luhansk and Donetsk regions, they didn't want to take part in the coup, and they didn't want to recognise the newly installed, which America installed them. And if you look up that phone call, it'll tell you. And some people don't want to, they just don't want to know about these things. It's a strange thing, especially in the UK. They don't want to entertain anything or any. If you give them any data, and that goes back to the guy called Bezmenov. Once you're indoctrinated, then it doesn't matter what you're presented with. Once you've got that kind of, well, it's a hatred actually for Russia there's no real good reasons for it. If you look into it, or if you had a questionnaire and said, well, why? Name 5 reasons why you don't like why this person's the infidel or whatever. Vladimir, and they couldn't tell you, but they just know that that's the evil, and Russia are planning and all the rest of it. Although they ceded all these Soviet Warsaw Pact countries, they ceded them in around about 1991, which Ukraine was one of them. And Ukraine continued actually having relations with Russia after that. So now they're all bent out of shape in the West, because America have recognised, they've realised that that they're not going to win, and they're not even going to do the second kind of if they weren't going to win, the other objective was to weaken Russia to a point where it collapses from all the sanctions and the military action and politically. None of which has happened. Quite the opposite has happened, and they underestimated them, and they still are to this day. And if you listen to a lot of these people, like this Kaya Callas and people like that, they're just I don't know whether they don't know what's going on or that they don't want to. I think it's the second one. They just can't see past it, you know. And they think, and they talk as if that they're gonna somehow win. But it's not gonna happen. And Zelensky, he was reveling in it because he's had all these interviews now because no one was talking to him a few weeks back, and for the last 6 months, no one was hugging him anymore. But now it's all come back again, and because of the American stance, and the Americans have recognised that they're not going to win and they're not going to weaken Russia either. They've done the opposite, so they don't want to be part of. This is, in my opinion, the way I see it, the big picture. This is the big picture that I can see. Is that they don't want to be in the middle of this now because Russia are very, very close to winning hands down, and they don't really want that either. They don't want Ukraine on their hands. That's not their objective. From what I can see, this is just my opinion. And they don't want that. So, and the person who's standing in the way of all this is Zelensky. And he's in Europe saying, you know, we've got to talk about peace and we've got to do this and do that. But he's the one who won't negotiate. He made it in the constitution that they don't talk to Russia or anybody in Russia for as long as Putin's in charge, you know. And Putin, again, he doesn't recognise Zelensky because he cancelled the elections, which in the constitution they can cancel elections, parliamentary elections, but not for the presidency during times of conflict. They've still got to have the presidency elections. That's according to the Ukrainian. Anyway, that's just all these complications. But he won't talk to Russia and Russia won't talk to him for those reasons. So America have kind of... They haven't stepped in. What they want to do is get out. That's how I can see it. They want to get out, and they're actually J.D. Vance is distancing himself from Europe. He's not getting involved with the discussion about Ukraine. He's saying Europe's going the wrong direction. He's just said that your biggest threats aren't Russia or China. Your biggest threats is within Europe. And well, he's pointing the finger at Brussels, obviously, and all this banning right wing stuff and all the rest of it. What they call right wing, and this is prevalent in the UK, where if you don't agree with the narrative, you're right wing. So that makes and if that's the case, there is no more of a definition of right wing in the definition that they use than Ukraine. It's the most right wing country you'll ever come across, because all their stuff is all about nationalism and banning Russian speaking, banning Hungarian speaking, and all the rest of it. And they've closed down the Orthodox religion as well. So that's it. You couldn't get more right wing, and the private armies in the beginning, who went down to Donetsk to sort them out, which didn't happen, and Luhansk, they're called the right sector, and they were also the Azov battalion, are in Mariupol, which is down on the Azov Sea anyway. And they all banded together with the regular army, and they thought they were going to go down to Donbass and just sort them out, as it were. And that never happened because there was too much resistance. And I think Russia got involved then, because that's what it was all about. It was all right-wing stuff. And like, so now these people who like, you know, call posting online and stuff like that on TikTok right-wing extremism, which it isn't, you know, because a lot of these countries like Bulgaria and Romania, they'd be deemed as right-wing because they're nationalist. A lot of the people are nationalist in a sense of they like nation-state democracy. That's what it was all about in the first place, like breaking away from the Warsaw Pact and all that, to get democracy back, and they like it. They like voting for whoever, and Bulgaria have got that many parties, they can't form a government half the time. And and none of them like Viktor Orban, and he's kicked out all the NGOs and that. Soros, he was getting involved in George Soros, and if you don't know about George Soros, you might as well not be listening to this anyway, unless you want to go and find out. But with all these things, you've got to listen, and like not go, oh yeah, well, the evil this and China and all the rest of it. I mean, the West has relied on those countries. So if those countries were going to invade, they wouldn't be supplying you with cheap gas. It doesn't make any sense. It's upside down. And now the people in Munich, all the Europeans, they're not talking about peace. They're still talking about winning, victory. They're not talking about stopping the war. They just said that they need to be informed and they need to be asked, like Annalena Baerbock and all the rest of them, Kaya Kallister, all these people in Cuckoo Land, you know. And Viktor Orban, he's the infidel, along with actually, what's his name's got the president of Bulgaria, because he's a lot less vocal, but he's had the stance all the way through. He said, you will not solve that militarily. That's all he said. You will not solve it, not with Russia. You know, these people know about Russia. People in the UK, they don't know nothing about it. But these people know about Russia and what they're about, you know. And he just said all along, and that's what really, if you listen to Viktor Orban, that's what he's really saying all along. He said, you're not going to solve it. Stop fighting. You will not beat Russia. That's what he's it's basics. Very, very basic. Orban isn't saying, oh, do this deal, do that deal, do the other deal. He just said you're wasting your time and you're wasting your money and you're trying to get everyone else involved as well, that's what Zelensky does. And they're all back there now, clapping everyone. So now you got Europe, which is and these Baltic states mouthing off a lot more than the Balkans, actually, a lot more. They seem to think that like they're invincible and someone's gonna, people are gonna help them, and they're not. And they've just actually been taken off the grid, the national grid of Russia. They've even been getting the electricity there. I didn't know that. So anyway, they just had this thing. Von der Leyen was there, and she said, right, switch off the Russian electric and on with the other grid, and they had this big thing where it was like all these lights, and it was all supposed to be like switching over grids. And what happened is the electricity more than doubled as that happened. So well done to those states. They've just doubled or more their electric bills. Now, why would Russia be supplying them with electricity all this time? Cheap electricity? Well, obviously, because now they're paying more than double. I think it's more or less triple, actually. And the same with the gas. You've just got to think logic. Why would they do it? And the people who've just cut off the last, I think it's the next to last actually, gas transiting through Ukraine, is the Ukrainians have cut it off. It was still getting supplied through Ukraine and the reason why they did it was because it mainly supplies Hungary and what's his name, Slovakia. That's why they did it, to cut off the nose to spite the face again. And so there's all these things happening. You've got to look at the big picture, and apart from this, and you've got to dig down for the reasons why Donetsk and Luhansk went against the coup d'etat in 2014-15, and there was two deals on the table then, and one of them was from the EU. This is separate to the coup. There was two deals on the table. One of them was from the EU and one of them was from Russia, and the Russian one was really good. And those who have ever read them, and I have to say, I read them back in 2015 because I was interested then in how this was going to go. So I thought, well, and you could read them, and the EU one was like, you're at the back of the queue until you do A, B, C, D, and E. And it would have took him, they reckon, another 30 years to meet all these criteria to join the EU. But while they were in the queue, they weren't with Russia. That was the crux of it. If they'd have accepted the EU deal, which they wanted to, but EU took it off the table. And it's never been back on. They still haven't. They're giving it all this now in Munich, but it's still not in the queue. Ukraine is still not in the queue because of the way they acted after the coup. Because all these private armies surfaced and they went into, like, basically at that stage it was civil war. At that stage it was civil war. And then they obviously, what's his name got involved, and because of the Black Sea Fleet, and they had a lot of military in Crimea and Russia, and they said, hang on a minute, we're in the middle of a civil war here, so they annexed the Crimea and the Black Sea Fleet. And I don't know, it was split. When I think it was way back. It might have been in 1991 or previously. I don't know, but they shared the ports and they shared the facilities and all that, and they were like Belarus. Now, that's another one, but what's his name mentioned it, and I don't think he could help himself the other day in his speech. And he started ranting about Belarus, who like, and the Russians are going to do false flag or something, and Belarus, And he kept mentioning Belarus, but it didn't come across what he was trying to say. I don't know what he was trying to say. So watch out for a false flag there, and it won't be the Russians who's doing it. Belarus. Now, Belarus have been there all the time. Russia hasn't invaded them. Just like it did, and Belarus, they don't want to join NATO. They're pro-Russian, if you want to call them pro-Russian. It means that, they're allies of Russia. They've chosen that way, and they tried to do one of these, I think they call them, like, generally colour revolutions there on 2 occasions. And their president, he was there. Remember, he was there on this bridge with a submachine gun. The president. That was around the same time, 2015-16, and they tried to overthrow him, and they didn't manage that one. So yeah, look at Victoria Nuland and go back. And if you want to deny, you can deny all you want about what she says and all that, but she says it in the phone call. She names names of who they're going to put in power. And that's what they did. Yatsenyuk, he became the Prime Minister. And then he disappeared. They all did. Like rats up a drainpipe. And then Zelensky came along. He was the new kid on the block. And he has been ever since. And he's just got a lot of people killed. And actually, Boris Johnson, they had a deal on the table and they were talking. Russia and Ukraine were talking, and they'd signed a preliminary signed a deal in Istanbul for peace and to sort out the borders would have frozen at that time, I think, or whatever. And Boris Johnson went in. He said, "No, you've got to carry on with the war. You've got to go to war." And that's what they did. And he said, "Well, we'll give you anything you need." And then the phrase was coined, "for as long as it takes." And now it's not really mentioned. So if you listen to the Europeans now, they don't really know. They don't really say, "keep on fighting and we're going to do this, that, the other." They're saying now, like, we should be at the table. And America hasn't got a table. They're not sorting it out. They're getting out of it. If you look what's happening, they're not sorting Ukraine out. They are getting out of the way. That's what they're doing. And if you listen to what Trump says, all he says is again and again, "You wouldn't have had a war if I'd have been in charge." And that's, it wouldn't have happened. That's all he keeps saying. And he's not saying, well, how the borders are going to be split up or this, that, the other. Because he knows the game's up. They want to get out. And that's what they're doing. And that's what J.D. Vance's thing was all about. It wasn't about Europe. It was about America pulling back out of the way. And they're saying to Europe, you are going to sort it out. And the Europeans, they don't even know what's happening, from what I can see. But that's what America are doing. They're not dealing with Putin about what's going to happen in Ukraine. That's my opinion. But watch it develop now. And the reason why J.D. Vance was made all these statements is to get them out of the way and to get the Europeans kind of against America. Because America was slagging off the Europeans and the UK for the lack of democracy and free speech and all the rest of it. That's what it's about. Just to create a rift so they can get out the road, get out the way. That's what's happening. That's what's happening. And Trump isn't interfering with it. You know, he's just paying lip service to Zelensky, and he's had a conversation with Putin. He's probably said, we're going to get out the way. And that's what he said, and that's what the other guy said. Is it Hexler? Hexeleg or something like that. He's the other American guy, and he just said, we're not getting involved. There's no NATO membership. There's no American troops will not go near Ukraine, and we're off. That's basically what he said. And if you can't see that, well, you can't see it. But you watch what happens now. You watch what happens. And Zelensky was there. He was lapping it up in this Munich because he got a stage, which he hasn't had for a while now, until now. And it's all because Trump, everyone likes to hate Trump and everyone likes to hate Putin. So now, what Trump is saying, right? Well, there you go. There you go, Zelensky and Brussels and the UK. You can all sort it out on your own, and that's what it's all about. All these speeches and statements, and that's why they went after the Europe. J.D. Vance. Okay, they're not daft, the Americans. I'll give them that. But they started the war. Victoria Nuland, look it up. Cheers.